The massive starship Harmony drifted through the darkness of space like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Beside the ship, Ambassador Hannah Kim stood at the observation deck, watching distant stars grow brighter as they approached their destination. She had been dreaming of this moment for 3 years, ever since the Galactic Council first sent their message to Earth. "We know you exist," the message had said in perfect English. "We invite you to join us." Now, after 8 months of travel through hyperspace, they were finally here. Hannah pressed her palm against the cold metal wall and took a deep breath. Everything humanity had worked for came down to the next few days. "Ambassador, we're getting our first visual of Nexus Station," called Tae-sung from behind her. Oh, he was her tactical advisor, a serious man who always spoke in measured tones. Even now, with history about to be made, his voice stayed calm and steady. Hannah turned to look at the main screen. What she saw took her breath away. Nexus Station was enormous. It looked like someone had taken a dozen cities and welded them together into a spinning wheel floating in space. Lights twinkled across its surface like stars, and ships of every shape and size moved around it like busy insects. "My God," whispered Una Park, the team's xenobiologist. She was the youngest member of their group, barely 30 years old, but she knew more about alien life than anyone else on Earth. "It's beautiful. It's also heavily defended," Tae-sung added, pointing to his scanner readings. "I count at least 50 weapons platforms, plus patrol ships we can't even identify." Baum Lee, their communications specialist, looked up from his console. "I'm receiving docking instructions in 17 different languages. They want us to use Bay 47. Hannah nodded. Keikasan captain. The ship's captain, an older woman named Silva, had been chosen for this mission because she was the best pilot in the Earth fleet. She guided the Harmony through the maze of traffic around Nexus Station with smooth, expert movements. As they got closer, Hannah could see other ships docked at the station. Some looked like metal insects with too many legs. Others were smooth and curved like eggs. One looked like it was made entirely of crystal and light. Each ship represented a different species, a different world, a different way of thinking about the universe. "Docking complete," Captain Silva announced. "Ambassador, they're requesting your immediate presence in the diplomatic sector." Hannah straightened her dark blue uniform and checked her appearance in the mirror one last time. She had to look perfect. She represented not just herself, but all of humanity. "Remember," she told her team as they prepared to leave the ship, "we're here to learn and to make friends. Keep your eyes open, stay polite, and don't touch anything unless they tell you it's safe." The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and they stepped onto Nexus Station. The first thing that hit them was the smell. It wasn't bad, exactly, but it was completely alien. It reminded Hannah of ozone and flowers and something else she couldn't identify. The air felt thick and slightly warm against her skin. The corridor they found themselves in was huge, easily 20 feet high and just as wide. The walls were covered in patterns that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. Soft music played from somewhere, but it used notes and rhythms unlike anything from Earth. Their guide was waiting for them. It called itself Keth, and it looked like a 7-foot-tall bird covered in silver feathers. Its eyes were large and golden, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome, humans," Keth said, bowing its long neck. "The council is eager to meet you. Please, follow me." They walked through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Hannah saw creatures that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of living metal, and some that were just clouds of glowing gas held together by force fields. Every few steps brought a new wonder, a new impossibility. "Don't stare," Tae-sung whispered, but Hannah couldn't help herself. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of since they first looked up at the stars. They passed through what Keth called the cultural quarter. where beings from different worlds shared their art and music. In one plaza, crystalline creatures sang in harmonies that made Hannah's bones vibrate. In another, gaseous beings created sculptures out of light and air. Your species is young, Kath explained as they walked. Most council members have been traveling between stars for thousands of your years. But youth brings fresh perspectives, and the council values new viewpoints. He entered a lift that moved not just up and down, but sideways and diagonally through the station. Through the transparent walls, Hannah could see gardens filled with plants from 100 different worlds, markets where beings traded goods she couldn't even identify, and vast chambers where different species seemed to be conducting scientific experiments. The council chamber is located at the station's center, Kath continued. It is designed to be comfortable for all member species. The atmosphere is carefully controlled. The gravity is set to galactic standard, and translation systems ensure everyone can communicate. The lift stopped, and they stepped out into a waiting area outside the council chamber. Here, representatives from dozens of species sat or stood or floated, all waiting their turn to address the council. Hannah felt a chill run down her spine. These beings had been exploring space when humans were still living in caves. They had technologies that seemed like magic, wisdom gathered over millennia, and experience with countless other species. What could humanity possibly offer them? Ambassador Kim, Kath said, "The council will see you now." The doors to the council chamber opened silently, revealing a vast circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central platform. Hundreds of beings filled those seats, representing every species in the galaxy. At the center of it all was a raised platform where the humans would make their presentation. As they walked toward the platform, Hannah could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching their every move. Some of those eyes showed curiosity, others showed indifference, and a few showed something that might have been hostility. The High Counselor, reptilian being called Vorthok, rose from his seat. His scales were dark green and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "Humans of Earth," he said, "you have traveled far to reach us. The Galactic Council welcomes you and looks forward to learning about your species. Please, tell us about yourselves." Hannah stepped forward onto the platform. This was the moment she had prepared for her entire adult life. Everything she said in the next hour would determine humanity's future among the stars. She began to speak, telling the council about Earth and its people, about human history and culture, about their hopes and dreams for the future. As she spoke, she noticed that the alien representatives seemed genuinely interested. They leaned forward in their seats, asked thoughtful questions, and nodded approvingly at her answers. Maybe this would be easier than she had thought. Maybe humanity really did have a place among the stars. Maybe the galaxy was ready to welcome them as equals. She had no way of knowing that some of the beings listening to her words were already planning humanity's destruction. 3 days had passed since their first meeting with the Galactic Council. Hannah Kim felt like she was living in a dream. The council members had been friendly and curious, asking dozens of questions about human culture, technology, and history. They seemed genuinely impressed by humanity's progress, despite being such a young species. "They want to invite us to something called the Welcoming Ceremony," Anna told her team as they sat in their quarters aboard the Harmony. "High Counselor Vorthok says it's a traditional honor given to new species joining the council." Tae-sung frowned as he read through the formal invitation on his tablet. Its location is listed as Sector 7. That's a restricted area of the station. A security clearance doesn't show any details about what's there. Maybe they keep their most important ceremonies private, suggested Yuna Park. She was still excited about everything they had seen. "I mean, we wouldn't let aliens into our most sacred places right away either." Lee looked up from his communications console. I've been monitoring station traffic for the past 3 days. Sector 7 shows almost no activity. Very few ships go there, and the ones that do stay for less than an hour. You're being paranoid, Yuna said. People have been nothing but kind to us. The Ethereals even shared some of their scientific data with me. Why would they want to hurt us? Hana wanted to agree with Yuna. The past 3 days had been wonderful. She had walked through gardens filled with plants from across the galaxy. She had watched artists create sculptures out of pure energy. She had eaten foods that tasted like music and listened to music that painted pictures in her mind. But something felt wrong. She couldn't put her finger on it, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there during their first day. I think we should go, Hannah decided. But we stay alert. And Bomb, I want you to keep a communication channel open to the ship at all times. Already planned on it, Bomb replied. The next morning, Keth arrived to escort them to the ceremony. The silver-feathered guide seemed different today, less talkative. Its golden eyes kept darting around, as if watching for something. Is everything all right? Hana asked, as they walked through the station corridors. Of course, Keth replied, but his voice sounded strained. The ceremony is a great honor. Very few species receive such recognition so quickly. Took a different route through the station today, instead of the busy markets and cultural districts. They walked through quiet maintenance corridors and empty service tunnels. The walls here were plain metal, and the only sound was the hum of machinery. Where's everyone? Yuna asked, looking around nervously. Sector 7 is kept quiet for ceremonial purposes, Keth explained. Too much noise would disturb the sacred rituals. They entered a transport pod that carried them deeper into the station. Through the windows, Hannah could see they were moving toward the station's outer ring, far from the central areas where most activity took place. The pod stopped at a platform that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Dust covered the floors, and the lights were dim. Keth led them through a series of heavy doors that sealed shut behind them with loud clicks. I don't like this, Tae-sung whispered to Hannah. We're getting too far from populated areas. The ceremony chamber is just ahead, Keth said, as if it had hurt him. They walked through one final door and found themselves in a massive circular room. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were lined with viewing boxes that rose in tiers, like an ancient coliseum. In the center of the room was a raised platform surrounded by strange metal devices that hummed with energy. But what made Kana's blood run cold was what filled those viewing boxes. Hundreds of alien beings sat in the tiered seating, all watching them with predatory interest. These weren't the friendly council members they had met over the past 3 days. These creatures looked hungry, excited, like spectators at a gladiator match. Keth, Hannah said slowly, what exactly is this ceremony? When she turned around, Keth was gone. The door they had entered through was sealed tight. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. High Counselor Vorthok stepped onto a platform high above them, his dark scales gleaming under the harsh lights. Humans of Earth, his voice boomed, welcome to your true introduction to galactic society. What you are about to experience is called the Trial of Worthiness. It is an ancient tradition that determines whether a species deserves to join our civilization. Tae-sung immediately moved to protect the others, but energy fields suddenly surrounded each of them, trapping them in place, like invisible cages. You lied to us, Hannah said, her voice carrying clearly in the silent chamber. We told you no lies, Orthok replied. We said we would determine if your species is worthy of joining us. This is how that determination is made. More aliens stepped onto viewing platforms around the chamber. Hannah recognized some of them from the council meetings, but their friendly masks were gone now. In their place was cold scientific interest. A tall, insect-like creature, called a Nexary, clicked its mandibles together as it spoke. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, we have tested 47 species with this trial. Only 12 have proven worthy of survival. What happened to the other 35? Yuna asked, though her voice was barely a whisper. They were eliminated, said an ethereal, its crystalline body ringing like a bell as it spoke. Unworthy species are a danger to galactic peace. They must be removed before they can spread their weakness. The metal devices around the platform began to glow brighter. Hana could feel heat radiating from them, and the air began to smell like ozone and burning metal. The trial is simple, Vorthok explained. You will experience pain, great pain, if you can endure it without losing your dignity, without begging, without breaking. Your species will be granted membership in our council. If you fail, Earth will be quarantined and all human colonies will be destroyed. This is insane, Baum said, struggling against his energy prison. You can't judge an entire species based on torturing for people, can't we? asked Alex, its razor-sharp teeth gleaming. Pain reveals truth. Under extreme stress, beings show their real nature. If humans are weak, they will break. If they are strong, they will endure. We have conducted this trial for millennia, added another council member. It has never failed to reveal the true character of a species. The devices around the platform were glowing white-hot now. Kana could see energy building up in their cores, preparing to unleash whatever horrors the council had planned. Please, she said, trying one last time to reach whatever mercy might exist in these creatures. We came here in peace. We want to be friends, to learn from you, to contribute to galactic civilization. Isn't there another way? Peace and friendship are luxuries, Orthok replied. Okay, only the strong deserve them. The weak must be culled before they can corrupt the strong. The alien audience leaned forward in their seats, eager for the show to begin. Some were taking notes on strange devices. Others were placing what looked like bets on the outcome. Your first test subject will be the young female, announced a council member, pointing at Yuna Park. No, Hannah shouted, but her energy cage held her fast. Yuna looked terrified, but tried to stand straight and proud. If this is what you need to see, then do it. But know that humans don't break easily. We shall see, Vorthok said. The first device activated with a sound like tearing metal. Energy lanced out and struck Yuna directly in the head. She screamed as neural disruptors invaded her mind, creating pain without physical damage. The sound echoed through the chamber like the cry of a dying animal. The aliens watched with clinical detachment as Yuna fell to her knees, clutching her head and sobbing. Some made notes, others nodded approvingly. Predictable response, commented the Nexari. Fear, pain, and immediate collapse. Very typical for primitive species. Hana watched in horror as her friend writhed on the platform. This wasn't a test. It was torture, pure and simple. And it was only the beginning. The council had lured them here with false friendship and fake ceremonies. They had trapped 4 humans, far from help, far from witnesses, in a chamber designed for systematic brutality. As Yuna's screams filled the air, Hannah realized the terrible truth. The Galactic Council wasn't interested in welcoming humanity. We're interested in watching humans break, and if humans broke the way they expected, Earth itself would pay the price. The trial had begun. Yuna Park's screams echoed through the chamber for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The neural disruptors sent waves of pure agony directly into her brain, making her feel like her skull was being split open with hot knives. She collapsed onto the metal platform, her body shaking uncontrollably. Please, she gasped between sobs. Please, make it stop. I'll do anything. Just make it stop. The alien observers made notes on their devices, okay? Some nodded to each other as if confirming something they already knew. Standard response pattern, announced the Nexari, its insect voice clicking with satisfaction. Initial resistance, followed by complete psychological breakdown. Duration, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. High Counselor Vorthok raised his clawed hand, and the neural disruptors shut down. Yuna fell forward onto her hands, breathing heavily, tears streaming down her face. The young female has provided adequate data, Vorthok said. Next subject, the male designated as tactical advisor. No, Hannah shouted from her energy prison. Haven't you done enough? She's just a scientist. She'd never hurt anyone. Hurt is not the issue, replied an ethereal, its crystal body chiming softly. Weakness is the issue. Your species must prove it can endure what the galaxy will demand of it. The energy cage around Tae-sung flickered and disappeared. He immediately ran toward Yuna, but invisible force fields pushed him back toward the center of the platform. Your concern for the female is noted, said Vorthok, but now you must face your own test. Different devices began to activate around the platform. These ones looked like massive metal rings that hummed with a deep, threatening sound. Gravity generators, Hannah realized with growing horror. The gravitational crushers will increase pressure on your body, slowly, explained to Kalex, its sharp teeth gleaming with anticipation. Most subjects maintain consciousness long enough to experience their bones beginning to crack. Tae-sung stood straight and faced the aliens with as much dignity as he could manage. If this is what you need to see, then do it. But I want you to know that Earth will never bow to creatures like you. Defiance, noted another council member. Also typical in the early stages. The gravity rings activated. Suddenly, Tae-sung felt like he weighed 1,000 pounds. His knees buckled as invisible force pressed down on him from all directions. The pressure built slowly, methodically, crushing him inch by inch. He gritted his teeth and tried to stay standing, but the force was overwhelming. His ribs began to compress. His spine felt like it was being squeezed in a giant fist. Blood vessels in his eyes burst from the pressure. Stop, he whispered, then louder, stop, please stop. But the pressure kept building. Tae-sung could hear his bones creaking like old wood. The pain was beyond anything he had ever imagined. It felt like being crushed by an entire mountain. I can't, he gasped, falling to his knees. Please, I can't take any more. Please, stop. The aliens watched with the same cold interest they had shown during Yuna's torture. Some were taking detailed readings of his vital signs. Others were comparing his responses to data from previous tests. Predictable failure threshold, commented the Nexari. Physical collapse, followed by verbal surrender. Duration, 6 minutes. In 12 seconds, the gravity rings powered down. Tae-sung collapsed completely, his body unable to support even normal weight after the crushing pressure. He lay on the platform, breathing in short, painful gasps. Next subject, Vorthok announced. Bomley's energy cage disappeared. He looked at his 2 broken teammates, then at the eager faces of the alien audience. His hands were shaking, but he walked to the center of the platform without being forced. What are you going to do to me? He asked quietly. Iconic torturers, replied an alien that looked like a walking tree. Kaya sound waves that directly attack your nervous system. Akui, you will feel as if liquid fire is flowing through your veins. New devices rose from the platform floor. They looked like speakers, but they hummed with energy that made the air itself vibrate. Even before they activated, Baum could feel his teeth aching from the subsonic vibrations. I'll work with communications equipment, Baum said, trying to sound. .com. I know about sound waves. Can't break me with noise. We shall see, said Vorthok. The sonic torturers activated with a sound like a scream from hell. The waves hit Baum's nervous system directly, bypassing his ears and attacking his brainstem. It felt exactly as the alien had described, like molten metal was being poured through his blood vessels. Bomb tried to stay standing, tried to show strength, but the pain was impossible to fight. It attacked him from inside his own body. Every nerve ending felt like it was on fire. His vision filled with red lightning. He lasted longer than the others. For almost 8 minutes, he stood on the platform, swaying but refusing to fall. Tate. Aliens began to murmur among themselves, some seeming impressed by his endurance. But eventually, even Bomb Lee broke. He fell to his knees, then onto his side, his body convulsing as the sonic waves tore through him. "Stop," he screamed. "Please stop. I give up. We give up. Just stop." The devices powered down. Bomb lay curled in a ball, shaking and whimpering. "Interesting," said the ethereal. "It's longer duration than expected, but the same ultimate result. Total psychological surrender." High Counselor Vorthok looked down at the 3 broken humans on the platform, then turned his attention to Hannah Kim. She was the only one left. "Ambassador," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber, "you have watched your team endure our tests. You've seen them break. You know what awaits you. Do you wish to spare yourself the pain and simply surrender now?" Hannah looked at Yuna, still crying softly on the metal floor. She looked at Tae-sung, barely able to breathe after the crushing pressure. She looked at Bomb, curled up like a wounded animal. These were her people, her friends, her responsibility. She had led them here. She had trusted the aliens. She had walked them straight into this trap. "No," she said quietly. "What?" Vorthok asked. "No," Hannah repeated, louder this time. "I won't surrender. I won't give up. If you want to break me, you'll have to work for it." Her energy cage disappeared. She walked slowly to the center of the platform, stepping carefully around her injured teammates. The alien audience leaned forward in anticipation. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the final test, the complete breaking of the human spirit. "You have watched pain destroy your companions," said Vorthok. "You know you cannot resist what we will do to you. Why prolong the inevitable?" Hannah looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. They expected her to break, just like the others. They expected tears and screams and begging. They expected her to prove that humans were weak, that Earth deserved to be quarantined and destroyed. "'Cause," she said clearly, "you don't understand what you're dealing with." "And what are we dealing with?" asked the Nexari, mandibles clicking. "With amusement. Humans," Hannah replied. "And the thing about humans is this. We've been dealing with pain and suffering and impossible odds since we first stood upright. We've survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that would wipe out most species. We don't break easily." "We shall see about that," said Vorthok. All the torture devices activated at once. Neural disruptors attacked her mind. Gravity crushers pressed down on her body. Sonic torturers sent fire through her nerves. The combined assault was designed to destroy any living being's will to resist. Hannah Kim felt pain beyond description tear through every part of her being. Her vision went white. Her muscles screamed. Her bones felt like they were cracking. And then, impossibly, she began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle, barely audible over the sound of the torture devices. But it grew louder, stronger, more defiant with each passing second. The alien, the audience fell silent. This had never happened before. Through the agony that was destroying her body, Hannah Kim laughed at them all. Hannah Kim's laughter echoed through the chamber like music from another world. It wasn't the sound the aliens expected to hear. For 3,000 years, they had conducted these trials. They had heard screaming, begging, crying, and cursing, but never laughter. The torture devices continued their assault on her body. Neural disruptors sent lightning through her brain. Gravity crushers pressed down on her bones. Sonic torturers filled her nerves with liquid fire. The pain was so intense, it should have destroyed her mind completely. But Hannah kept laughing. "Stop the devices," ordered High Counselor Vorthok's voice uncertain for the first time. The torture machines powered down, but Hannah's laughter continued. She stood on the platform, blood running from her nose and ears, her body shaking from the abuse it had endured. But she was still laughing. "What is wrong with her?" asked an Exari, its mandibles clicking nervously. "Has the pain driven her insane?" "I don't think so," replied an ethereal, its crystal body ringing with concern. "Her vital signs show consciousness and awareness. She's not broken. She's just ... laughing." Hannah wiped the blood from her face and looked up at the alien audience. Her voice was weak but clear when she spoke. "Is that all you've got?" she asked, still chuckling. "My grandmother hit harder than that, and she was 90 years old with arthritis." A murmur ran through the alien observers. Several of them stepped back from their viewing positions. This was not going according to any pattern they had ever seen. "You think that was painful?" Hannah continued, her laughter becoming stronger. "Let me tell you about pain. Pain is a human woman giving birth to a baby without any medicine, and then doing it again 6 more times because she wants a big family. Pain is a human child falling off a bicycle, getting back up, and riding again before the scrapes even stop bleeding." She looked directly at Warthog. "Pain is a human soldier lying in a muddy trench, getting shot at by enemies, still cracking jokes with his friends, because what else are you going to do? Cry about it." The aliens were silent now, listening to every word. Some were taking frantic notes. Others were running scans on their instruments as if trying to understand what they were seeing. "You want to know what humans are?" Hannah asked, her voice growing stronger despite her injuries. "We're the species that looks at a mountain and says, 'I'm going to climb that.' We're the species that looks at the ocean and says, 'Going to sail across that.' We're the species that looks at the sky and says, 'I'm going to fly up there and see what's on the other side of those stars.'" She gestured toward her injured teammates. "You tortured my friends, and they screamed and begged because pain hurts. Of course it hurts, but breaking and bending are 2 different things. You bent them, but you didn't break them." As if responding to her words, Tae-sung slowly pushed himself up to a sitting position. His ribs were probably cracked, and his body was covered in bruises, but his eyes were alert and focused. "She's right," he said, his voice hoarse but determined. "You want to see how humans really respond to pain? We get back up." Bomley uncurled from his protective ball and struggled to his knees. The sonic torture had left him shaking, but he managed a weak smile. "We tell jokes about it later. Bad jokes, usually." Even Yuna Park, who had been the first to break, wiped the tears from her face and sat up straighter. "We learn from it. We study it. Figure out how to make it hurt less the next time." Hannah nodded at her team, pride filling her chest despite the pain coursing through her body. "You see, you think pain is a weapon that destroys us, okay? But for humans, pain is just information. It tells us something is wrong, so we fix it. It tells us we're in danger, so we get stronger. It tells us we're alive, so we keep fighting." The alien audience was becoming visibly agitated. Conversations broke out in dozens of different languages, as species that had never shown emotion began to argue among themselves. "This is impossible," said Akalax, its voice high with panic. "No species has ever responded this way to maximum torture protocols. Their brain chemistry is wrong," added another alien. "They should be producing fear hormones and submission chemicals. Instead, they're generating endorphins and adrenaline." Hannah laughed again, the sound cutting through the alien debates like a knife. "You want to know our secret? It's not complicated. When bad things happen to humans, We have two choices. We can cry about it, or we can laugh about it. Crying doesn't make the bad things go away, but laughing makes them easier to handle. She looked around at all the different species watching her. Every human child learns this. When you fall down, you get back up. When someone is mean to you, you don't let them see you cry. When life gets hard, you find something to smile about. But why? Asked an ethereal, its voice genuinely puzzled. What evolutionary advantage could this possibly provide? 'Cause, Hannah said, when you can laugh at pain, nothing can control you. When you can find humor in the worst situations, you can survive anything. When you refuse to let suffering break your spirit, you become unbreakable. She gestured toward the torture devices around the platform. You think these machines make you powerful? They don't. They make you bullies, okay? And humans have been dealing with bullies since we first formed tribes. The trick is simple. You don't give them what they want. And what do we want? Asked Vorthok, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. You want us to be afraid of you? Hannah replied. You want us to submit to you. You want us to accept that we're weak and you're strong. But here's the thing about humans. We're terrible at accepting things we don't like. She spread her arms wide, addressing the entire chamber. You've shown us your worst, and we're still here. We're still standing. We're still human. So what's your next move? The aliens fell completely silent. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species had not only survived their trial, but had turned it around on them. The humans hadn't just endured torture, they had made fun of it. High Counselor Vorthok looked at his fellow council members, then back at the four humans on the platform. These creatures were supposed to be weak and primitive. They were supposed to break like all the others. Instead, they were laughing. The trial is concluded, Vorthok announced, his voice uncertain. Did we pass? Hannah asked, still smiling despite the blood on her face. The alien council members looked at each other, communicating in rapid bursts of their native languages. Finally, Vorthok spoke again. You have exceeded our expectations, he said carefully. Good, Hannah replied, 'cause we're just getting started. The chamber erupted in chaos as different alien factions began arguing about what this meant. Through it all, four humans stood together on the platform, battered but unbroken, proving that sometimes the best response to cruelty is simple, defiant laughter. The galaxy would never be the same. The chaos in the chamber continued for almost an hour. Alien species that had maintained cold diplomatic relations for centuries were now shouting at each other in languages that sounded like breaking glass, grinding metal, and screaming wind. The humans sat on the platform, helping each other recover from their injuries while watching the greatest political crisis in galactic history unfold around them. I think we broke them, Bomley whispered, managing a weak smile, despite his obvious pain. Not broke, Hannah corrected, still chuckling softly. We just showed them something they didn't expect to see. High Counselor Vorthok finally restored order by activating a sonic damper that forced silence throughout the chamber. His dark scales seemed duller than before, and his golden eyes kept darting between the humans and his fellow council members. The trial has concluded, he announced formally. The human species has demonstrated unusual characteristics under stress testing. Unusual? Taesung asked, raising an eyebrow. Is that what you call torture now? Stress testing? Several? Aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Nexari representative clicked its mandibles nervously while the ethereals chimed in what sounded like a distressed harmony. The council must deliberate on these results, Orthak continued, ignoring Taesung's question. Such responses have never been recorded in our archives. What's to deliberate? Hannah asked, standing up despite her injuries. He wanted to see if we were worthy of joining your galactic civilization. We passed your test. Question now is whether we want to join a civilization that welcomes new members by torturing them. A murmur ran through the alien observers. The idea that a primitive species might reject membership in the Galactic Council was unthinkable. For 3,000 years, species had begged for the honor of joining their ranks. An elderly, ethereal, floated down from the viewing area, its crystalline body singing with nervous energy. You do not understand the significance of what has occurred here. In 3 millennia of testing, no species has ever responded to maximum pain protocols with laughter. Your psychological profiles are completely outside our understanding. Maybe that's your problem, Una said, wincing as she stood up. Maybe you've been testing for the wrong things. What do you mean? Asked the Kalex, leaning forward with obvious interest. You test for submission, Una explained. You test for fear. You test for breaking points. But those aren't the qualities that make a species valuable. Those are the qualities that make them easy to control. Hana nodded, feeling proud of her young teammate. You want to know what makes humans valuable? We don't give up. When something is wrong, we fix it. When something is impossible, we try anyway. Someone tells us we can't do something, we prove them wrong. And when someone hurts us, Taesong added, we find a way to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The humans weren't just talking about their own survival anymore. They were talking about protecting others from the same treatment. Vorthak's voice was carefully controlled when he spoke. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Hannah said, that your trial system is broken. How many species have you eliminated over the centuries? How many civilizations have you destroyed because they couldn't laugh in the face of torture? Weak species are a threat to galactic stability, replied a council member that looked like a walking tree. They spread their weakness to others. Or maybe, Baum said, they could have contributed something valuable if you had given them a chance. Maybe they had art or music or ideas that could have made the galaxy a better place. You speak of things you do not understand, Vorthak said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Do we? Hannah asked, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been so busy testing for strength that you forgot to test for wisdom. So busy looking for species that won't challenge you that you forgot to look for species that could help you grow. She walked closer to the edge of the platform, looking up at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. You know what humans would have done if we first met a new species? We would have invited them to dinner. We would have asked about their families. We would have tried to learn their favorite jokes. Weakness, muttered Calix. Is it? Hannah challenged. It's kindness, weakness. It's curiosity, weakness. Is the desire to understand others instead of dominating them really such a terrible flaw? The questions hung in the air like smoke. Several alien species began talking among themselves in hushed tones. Kana, the ethereals were chiming in complex harmonies that seemed to indicate deep thought. Finally, Kana, an ancient voice, spoke from the highest tier of the chamber. It belonged to a being so old that its species name had been forgotten. Most council members called it simply the First. In 60,000 years of life, the First said, I have never heard such questions asked in this chamber. As it is time we considered new answers. Warthog looked up at the First with obvious shock. Key, you cannot be suggesting that we abandon traditions that have served us for millennia. I am suggesting, the First replied, that traditions which require us to torture children are perhaps worth reconsidering. Una is 30 years old, protested Anexari. To my species, Hannah said, 30 is barely adult. To us, she's still young enough to learn and grow and become something amazing. You were ready to kill her for crying when you hurt her, okay? And yet she stands now, observed at the First, injured but unbroken, learning but not conquered. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human approach, after all. More aliens began speaking up from the viewing areas. Some defended the old ways, but others began to question them. A debate that had been impossible for 3,000 years was suddenly happening before everyone's eyes. High Counselor Vorthok raised his hand for silence. The council will recess to consider these matters. The humans will be returned to their ship while we deliberate. Wait, Hannah said. Before you go, I want to say something. The chamber fell quiet again. We came here hoping to make friends, Hannah said. We came here thinking the galaxy was full of wise, advanced civilizations that could teach us how to be better. Okay. In a way, you did teach us something. Okay. You taught us that advancement and wisdom aren't the same thing. She looked around at all the different species. But here's the thing about humans. We don't give up on people. Even people who hurt us. Even people who don't understand us. So our offer still stands. We still want to be friends. We still want to learn from you. And maybe, if you're willing, we can teach you a few things too. Such as, asked, Vorthak. Hannah smiled. And despite everything they had been through, it was a genuine, warm smile. Such as how to laugh when things get tough. Such as how to get back up when you fall down. Such as how to find hope in the darkest places. She paused, then added, and such as how to welcome new friends without torturing them first. The chamber erupted in discussion again, but this time it sounded different. Instead of angry arguments, there were curious questions. Instead of defending old positions, species were exploring new possibilities as the humans were escorted back to their ship. Hannah could hear the debates continuing behind them. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council was questioning its most fundamental beliefs. 3 days later, they received an official message. The Council had voted to grant humanity full membership with unprecedented privileges. But more importantly, they had voted to suspend the trial of worthiness pending a complete review of first contact protocols. The message was signed by 47 different species, including several that had never supported any reform measure in recorded history. But the real victory came in the final line of the message. Written personally by High Counselor Vorthok, we would be honored to accept your invitation to dinner. As their ship prepared to return to Earth, Hannah stood at the observation deck looking back at Nexus Station. The lights seemed brighter somehow, more welcoming than before. Think they'll really change? Tae-sung asked, joining her at the window. Hannah replied. Or maybe they'll go back to their old ways the moment we leave. But we planted a seed. We showed them that there's another way to look at things. And if they don't change? Hannah's smile had a sharp edge to it now. Then we'll just have to keep laughing until they get the joke. Behind them, Yuna and Bomb were already working on their reports for Earth. The story of humanity's first contact would spread quickly through human space. But more importantly, it would spread through alien space too. Word was already traveling through the galaxy about the species that laughed at torture, that turned pain into strength, that refused to be broken no matter what the universe threw at them. Some species would see this as a threat to be eliminated. Others would see it as hope for something better. But all of them would remember the sound of human laughter echoing through that chamber, defiant and unafraid. And in the depths of space, on worlds where other young species were just beginning to look up at the stars and wonder what waited for them out there, that laughter would become a legend, the legend of the humans who laughed through the pain, and in doing so, changed the galaxy forever.